pleasure to introduce an amazing leader in science and engineering. Professor Tapia is a mathematician at Rice University's Computational and Applied Mathematics Department. He is a university professor and the Maxfield Oshman Professor in Engineering. He is also director of the Tapia Center for Excellence and Equity. Among his many accolades, in 2010, Professor Tapia received the National Medal of Science, the highest honor bestowed by the U.S. government on scientists and engineers. And in 2014, he received the National Science Board's Vandenberg Bush Award. Professor Tapia, thank you for joining us here today.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I like to talk about these things, and especially myself. Okay.
Great. Well, Professor Tapia, you're the first person in your family to go to college. Can you tell us a little bit about your family background and your academic experience?
Sure. My mother and father came from Mexico. Okay, both. Okay, as young children. My mother was 11, my father was 7. And they came in search of education, but they came by themselves. They didn't come with parents. So they had to support themselves when they went to California, to Los Angeles. And even though they both wanted to be educated, they had to support themselves, so that they were not able to finish high school, okay? And yet, I know my mother and father were very, very talented. So they couldn't finish high school because for very pragmatic reasons. They had to support themselves, and so they didn't get through high school. But they instilled in us the notion of education and being valuable. So my twin brother, Bobby, and I were the oldest. We went through high school, then we both went to college, and all my siblings, with the exception of one, went to college and actually had graduate degrees. So even though my mother and father didn't go to high school, they sure instilled in us the value of education. And they couldn't tutor us, but they would say, one step at a time will take you to great places. And I used to tell my mom, "Mom, you're so naive. Of course that's not going to happen." But when I won the National Medal of Science, I closed my eyes and I said, "Mom, you're right, and thank you."
That's awesome. That's a beautiful story. And one part that I'm very curious about is what made you interested in mathematics to begin with?
I was always good at it. It's very simple. It wasn't that I sat down and looked at, say, oh, this and this and this. It was not my first love. My first love were cars. My twin brother, Bobby, and I built race cars, and we were very successful. In fact, the year I got a PhD, Bobby set the world record in fuel dragster. So that was a passion, cars and things. But I was always good in math, even in the first grade, second grade, third grade. Some teachers recognized it, some teachers acknowledged it, others didn't. But I always knew that I was good. I had a high opinion of my talent, even though I was a small fish in a little pond. So I said it should take me someplace. So in other words, today I think of so many things I could have done, and I think I would have enjoyed them all. But math was very easy because I was very good at it.
That is amazing. And one part that I'd like to understand is, can you explain in layman's terms what is optimization theory and your research with that?
Sure. Optimization is basically find the best something in a collection of things. For example, one of the oldest optimization problems is called the isoparametric problem. So you take a piece of string and you tie it together and you lay it on a table. And you say, what shape should I put it in so it gives the greatest area? So you lay it on the table and you move it, usually like that, okay? And if you ask anybody, they're going to say you should put it in a circle, okay? In fact, my wife, I asked her, a circle. And my wife knows no mathematics. But it took 2,000 years for mathematicians to prove that it should be a circle. In fact, that problem built the mathematical tools that were necessary. So just think how general math is in this sense. You want to make a decision, and you want to make the best decision. For example, you'd like to send a rocket to the moon, and you want to maybe minimize the amount of fuel you use. Or maybe you want to minimize the time taken, okay? So it's very simple that mathematics, my area of optimization, is let's take problems that come from business, from economics, from science, from engineering, and come up with mathematical tools to tell a person, a user, how can you find the best way of doing something? Everybody wants to do that. I mean, in anything, okay?
You make it sound so simple. Yeah. Besides mathematics, Professor Tapia, you are also a fierce advocate for underrepresented minorities and women receiving degrees in sciences and engineering. Why is that important for the health of our nation?
Okay, so I am, but to me it was very natural as I built a career in mathematics and a university professor, seeing that there was a group of people in this country that were not being represented. And yet if you look at the history of our nation, science and engineering has been the backbone of our nation. It's what made us world leaders, okay? So there's an important part of activity in this country. And yet we, as Hispanics and African Americans, weren't represented there. Now, what happens? There's a danger. There's two dangers, okay? But the danger is, as we Hispanics become the dominant part of the population, we're not represented in an area that has been the strength of the nation. So the nation's going to have to be weak. Our people no longer do science and engineering that we used to do, okay? So that's one of the dangers for the nation, okay? Then the other negative or dangerous thing is for the people. In other words, we need jobs. We need essentially to be stable within ourselves. We need our children to go off and do good things. So science and engineering in this country is an excellent opportunity to get good jobs. So we have to stop thinking just that, oh, I'm going to be a politician or a lawyer or a physician or something. The bulk of this country, the jobs, just think at all the industry, the computer industry that's in the Silicon Valley, Google and Microsoft and stuff like that. There are great jobs in this country if you are prepared for them. And you don't have to have a PhD, you have to have a bachelor's degree. So there's two things. We as Latinos are missing out on opportunities, and the nation is going to miss if we don't contribute.
You've been a national leader in producing underrepresented minorities and women receiving PhDs in mathematics. Now, what do you feel is the key to your success?
That I've been there, that I understand. How many people try to tell us what we're like? I'm at the national level and somebody says, we're going to talk about underrepresented minorities in education. And the person, himself or herself, is not an underrepresented minority. So I say, look, we've been there, we understand ourselves, we know what is, the things, we know what we've had to encounter. We know essentially the support and the lack of support. So to me, I never grew up thinking I wanted to become a national leader or I wanted to do education outreach. I simply wanted to be a mathematician, the best mathematician I could be. I loved it and I wanted. But I saw that I was uniquely situated to help in so many ways because I've been there. When somebody tells me, people can't tell me you don't understand. People can't tell me you haven't been there. I'll look in their eyes and I'll tell them, I've been everywhere. If I had to tell you stories of the adversity in my life and the successes, on this side is success and this side is failure and adversity. So I can look at you and say, there are very few things you can tell me that I don't understand. I've been, unfortunately, in too many directions. And understanding how to succeed in mathematics was what I learned along the way.
Now, what do you feel are some of the obstacles that are preventing underrepresented minorities and women from succeeding in sciences and engineering today?
Probably the first one is a feeling that we don't belong there. A feeling that, look, I'm a normal human being, okay? I like normal things. Why would I want to be a weird mathematician? Why would I be a weird scientist, okay? So one of the feelings strongly is that we don't belong. And if we're not there, then people will say, see, and there's proof, we don't belong. So that's an internal issue, okay? Another thing is, I believe that a lot of people are very biased in that they set up expectations. So look, if you happen to be Asian, we expect you to be a scientist or an engineer. If you happen to be Latino, we expect you to be this or that. So early expectations. And that also goes with the families. In other words, my mother never had limited expectations. So I have a sister who's a lawyer, I have a brother who's a lawyer, I have another brother who's a computer science. So she never set low expectations. She said, high expectations. So I say, among ourselves, we have to have really good, high expectations. I like it, I can do it, okay? I like mathematics, I can do it, okay? And so we need, and then teachers have to believe, yes, you can. Did I have teachers that believed, yes, you can? Maybe in my whole K-12 career, I can point out 3 teachers that believed in me, okay? And maybe 5 that weren't sure. But the ones that believed in me were wonderful, okay? Were they Latinas? No. Okay.
What are some of the creative techniques or programs that you use to help students succeed in science and engineering?
Okay, I'm very proactive. In other words, if the students come to Rice and they have talent, what I like to do is follow them. In other words, get maybe a graduate student, maybe an undergraduate, maybe another faculty, to follow that student, not get in their way, but say, how are you doing? How was your first exam? If it didn't go well, why didn't it go well? Okay? So in other words, be proactive in mentoring these students and catching them before they fall. By the time a minority student comes to you saying, I need help, it's too late.
So that leads into the Tapia Center offers a very unique mentoring program. Most people, some young people, don't even know why it's important to have a mentor. If you were to explain to a young person in HISD, why is it important to have a mentor?
People who have been there before will show you what the road's like, okay? One time years ago, my late daughter was having some problems at school, okay? And she went to HSPVA. And I said, Cersei, talk to the teacher. And she would say, no, the teacher doesn't want me to talk to her, and I don't want to talk to her. So I kept going. Finally, I made it happen, and I went with her, and the teacher said, I've been waiting for you to come and talk to me. So I was the one telling her, one of the things you need to do is to talk to the teacher. So I tell Rice students, talk to the professor. See how they feel about it. See how you're doing. See how you. So in other words, instead of just sitting back and wait, go find out what's happening. If you're not doing well, find out why you're not doing well and fix it. It isn't that everybody does everything well. Okay, I've been in situations where I've done some things really well and I haven't. Then you have to ask, why didn't it go right? What do I need to change? How do I need to go? So what a lot of students, in particular Rice students, they're very smart, but they don't know survival skills. They don't know how to say, okay, look, it's not going the way I want it, so I need to change something. My mother taught us survival skills. It's not going right, then let's figure out how to make it go right. Okay? So it's a combination. If you believe in yourself, you can go forward. And if you believe that at the end of the rainbow there's a pot of gold, okay? I believe there's a pot of gold because I've seen it. They gave it to me.
Now, if you were speaking to your younger self, knowing what you know now, what would you say to a young Richard Tapia?
Just to believe in yourself and go forward. And I never had a great plan. It wasn't that I wanted to be A or B or C. What I think my mother taught me and I taught myself is, as long as you keep taking one step forward, and this is what my mother believed, good things would happen. One step forward, one step forward, one step. But Mom, when are the good things going to happen? They're going to happen. They're going to happen. Then all of a sudden, there's a lot of things where you say, well, that wasn't so good. Then all of a sudden the good things happen. And I'm almost to the point now, I get so much recognition at this point in my life that sometimes I always feel, okay, that's enough, okay? That's enough. I've gotten enough, okay? And I must be safe to get recognition. But I would say believe and go one step at a time. And don't think it's going to happen overnight. But be happy with what you're doing. Be happy with what you're doing, okay? In other words, my children have always gone off in their own direction. And my son loves music, and he loves it so much, that's where he has to go. But he has talent. My wife is Nuyorican, Puerto Rican parents, and one of her uncles is Tito Puente. So Richard, my son, has talent, and that's his passion. That's where he has to go, okay? Now, was there anybody in my family that had math talent? I don't know. My mother, who didn't know her father after she was 11 years old, says she thinks he did, okay, in Mexico somewhere. Maybe, maybe not. But my brothers and sisters all seem to do very well once they get in school. And it helps when I lead and then they follow and they all go through. And both my sister and my brother told me, it was really hard to follow you, Richard, because, Mom was expecting more from us than she was from you, see. So my mom didn't put high expectations that you have to do this, you have to do it. She just says, just succeed. My mother would have been happy if I did no more than graduate from high school. Okay, she would. That's it. Not so with my younger brother. Okay, by that time she was saying, okay, we're going to expect a lot from you. So I haven't had a situation where I've had expectations put on me that were unrealistic. Okay, maybe I put them on myself. Maybe I don't. But I'm happy. I'm happy with, you know, accomplishments. In fact, I'm overwhelmed. You know, when I won the National Medal of Science, I said, come on. I mean, I'm overwhelmed. Those were my heroes. How can I be put in a class with my heroes, okay? These were the heroes that were the best in the world. And I'm with them? It just doesn't seem right. But I'll take it. I'll take it.
It seems right to me, and you're a hero for many people in the country and internationally, and we're very grateful for you spending time with us here today.
Oh, but I enjoy it.
And so I'd like to say I want to thank all my guests for joining us on the show today, and I'm Juliet Stipeche, and we'll see you next time on HISD Up Close.